MsFoundation for Women is a social justice foundation, which means that we operate primarily at the connection between race, class, and gender. Our belief from the very beginning in 1972 is that the power and the wisdom to make change that will benefit women and girls and eventually everyone in our society is held by women who are experiencing the problems.
I think one of the most impactful things that we're able to do is to resource women to build their own leadership. We trust the work that's happening on the ground. We trust the women that we resource, and we believe that really she is best positioned to make the most effective change.
The MsFoundation was pulled in a deep way into the South by Katrina. We knew, because of this intersection of race, class, and gender, that women, low-income women and women of color, would be disproportionately impacted by what happened, and that they would remain largely invisible. How can we, through primarily advocacy and organizing strategies, how can we make a difference in the lives of those women and children?
In Mississippi, it costs more to send a child to child care than it does to send a child to college. Many of the families that qualify for child care assistance are headed by single mothers.
What can you do when you're making $8 an hour and you got 4 children? You can't leave them alone. You can't miss a day off your job. Even if they gave you a day off, you can't afford to.
The Mississippi Low-Income Child Care Initiative is organized to help low-income women get child care services that they need in order to pursue work or education. We both do a lot of advocacy with policymakers at the state level and a lot of public education at the grassroots level.
So we do a lot of work around educating the parents. We educate the child care staff and the providers so that they can actually be the voice that bring forth the changes that needs to be met.
In the short term, it's an anti-poverty program, and in the long term, it is a huge investment because there are many studies that show that quality early childhood education experiences yield long-term outcomes for children that can be measured in long-term savings to the society at large, but also in long-term life gains for children.
The work of the MsFoundation post-Katrina and now in the South more broadly is changing the lives of individual women.
We aren't the people that are doing the work on the ground, but we have a view of what's happening and that we can be a bridge in some ways between organizations that we support and other resources that might be available.
At a broader level, the MsFoundation's work in the South has lifted up this connection of race, class, and gender. The outcome has been that women, and particularly women of color, low-income women, are much more visible on the landscape. One of the first lessons we learned and challenges that we face is how difficult it can be to bring together the connection of race, class, and gender. We've got to bring gender into the picture, and that's a much more difficult thing to do. It's a difficult connection to make.
I think the biggest lesson learned for us was really that this needed to be, our grant-making strategy needed to be much larger than post-Katrina work. How do we take the time to really develop longer-term, sustainable, holistic strategies that come from the ground and come from experience that we have?
You know, an ongoing challenge with this work is that we don't have enough resources to do it. And so it's hard for us to plan ahead. It's hard for us to really be, it's essential and difficult for us to focus in on what is the niche that we should be occupying, what is the absolute best use of the resources we have. It's a natural time for stronger partnerships, for people banding together and figuring out, well, if you played this role in what we want to have happen and I played that role, then we could get the whole thing done.
All these problems weren't caused overnight, and they're not going to be fixed overnight, and it's going to take a process and a lot of conversations that I think are worth being resourced.
We have to look even more at the connections between issues. We have to make sure that we're not just solving one problem at a time, but that we've looked at all the connections and found the most important strategic points where we can make an impact that will reverberate throughout women's lives, throughout the lives of women and children.
Having your ear to the ground is really important. Taking yourself out of thinking that you know what's best, and really hearing it from the people that are experiencing it daily and have the best answers for how their lives can be changed.